I began looking for my questions using Wikipedia. Wikipedia is like a Wikipedia but for Star Wars. By the end, I came up with many questions, but I only put down my best. I ended up only listing questions about Dagobah, R2-D2, Death Star, blasters, stormtroopers, and lightspeed. After reading about Star Wars for a while, I came upon an article about Dagobah. I found out that the environment of Dagobah was very similar to the ones of Earth. I then posed the question of if it's possible that Dagobah's plantation is similar to the one on Earth. Below I've added my need to know questions. As you can see, I'm scrolling down and I've actually created a lot of them. Our next competency was a pitch form. It included milestones and the different deadlines and our ideas, basically our pitch. Next task that we completed was the action plan. The action plan is like a go-to for your timeline and tells the chunks of your work, like sort it out for your project. The first 4 action steps included planning, how it might be formed, pitch form, and launch journal export. The steps 5 to 9 I put down for my action plan included the mini video, prototype or vision grid form, fail evidence, launch portfolio, and then finally, last but not least, the exhibition night. I think that this action plan will definitely help me throughout the course of this project, and I'll definitely be looking back to it many times. I'm going to bring up the need to know page again. For our need to know, we were asked to ask 3 different kinds of questions. The 3 questions include robot questions, detective questions, and judge questions. Robot questions are more like easy questions that you just search up on the web and it's like the first result. Detective questions will go a little bit deeper and like why, what cause, what do you predict, what does the author think, what do you think? And then judge questions are a bit more about your personal preference. The U phase is understanding the process or problem. This phase is all about doing authentic research. Authentic research includes interviews, research articles, watch videos, and analyze data. As you can see, I added basically the definition of understanding question or process right here. A huge part of understanding is having to research. We learned all about search terms and what sequence of word would get you the best and most useful answer. The internet is huge and seems to have endless information, although you may sometimes find that it is hard to get your answer. Specific search terms can help you get a more direct and useful answer. An example I would use for my project would be instead of planets of Star Wars, I would put how do planets in Star Wars have a livable environment for all beings. As you saw, I was more specific and I will receive more useful responses. The point of bettering your search terms is to provide a quicker and more accurate answer to your question. Above I've listed a few questions for both the Death Star and Earth. All of these questions use more specific search terms, which definitely helped in my process. My first question for the Death Star is how does the Death Star produce gravity? I narrowed my question down to the Death Star instead of asking like how does gravity be produced. This question gave me a much more useful response. Another one for the Death Star was what creates oxygen on the Death Star, right here. Due to my driving question being how can I change the environment or atmosphere of a planet, which in this case is the Death Star, without changing the plot of actual Star Wars, I find that what creates oxygen on the Death Star is going to help me when I'm trying to find out how I could create oxygen more realistic and more obvious without changing the plot. My last and final one would it be possible to create artificial gravity on the Death Star? I found that I got the most accurate and most useful response from this question. I think it was due to the fact that I just put exactly what I wanted and was very specific in my wording, and all of these questions got me the most satisfactory and quickest response. For Earth, I found that it was a bit more broad, but for what I was searching up, it was perfect. My first question was similar to one of the Death Star questions, which is how does the Earth produce gravity? This question was very easy to find due to that it's a big topic of conversation. The second question was how could you replicate oxygen in space? This question linked into space, but also into Earth, and the fact that Earth is the only known planet that has oxygen. After doing some research, I actually found out that it is possible to make artificial oxygen that is still breathable. And my third question is definitely the most broad out of the three, and it is what makes life possible on Earth? I found that this question will definitely help me the most when trying to find out my final product. Knowing the answer to this question will give me a better idea of how I can make the Death Star more realistic and the acts on the Death Star more realistic without changing the plot. The next phase we completed was the end phase, or the navigate phase. In this phase, we navigated ideas. In this section, I took all the acquired knowledge and trying to find out potential solutions to my inquiry question. I started off this phase by making a brainstorm on what maybe like my final product may be. I also analyzed ideas, combined ideas, and started to create a concept for what I'll create. The milestone for this phase was the mini video. In this video, I talked about how I narrowed down my ideas from the beginning research to all the way to my final idea and what I'm going to do for the project. I'll now show you a short video I've made. We started off the end phase with a how might we question in mind. My how might we question began with a very broad point of view with lots of information that I gathered. But due to the fact that I was moved to the Death Star, I had to narrow it down and make it more specific. My final how might we question ended up being how might we make the environments of the Death Star more realistic without changing the plot of the movies. After doing some deeper research on my inquiry question and the Death Star, it was time to think about some possible outcomes of my final product. The first idea that came to mind was that I could create a machine that could be in the Death Star to create a breathable environment. My next idea is that I could design a system in the Death Star that would make it possible for one of the characters in the movie to stay inside when there's an opening to space. When the Death Star is blown up, people in the Death Star always stay in, and that would not be possible in space realistically. I finally came up with my final product and what it's going to be. I did a nice brainstorm here to exemplify my driving question, materials needed, what research I did, and what I could support my inquiry question, which was my final product.